Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Sales Hacker webinar. We have a fantastic topic of discussion here today with an even better panel to speak to it. A ton of content to get through, and I guarantee you're going to walk away with a ton of actionable insights that you can throw into your day-to-day right now. So the topic we're speaking to today, closing the gap between B2B and B2C sales experiences. I do want to introduce our fantastic panel that we have here today. So to start off, I'm going to get each of these guys to just give us a bit of background on themselves, who they are, what they're all about, just so we can get a bit more acquainted. So I'll start off with Lou Wolf. He's the VP of New Business Sales at Zoominfo. Lou, thank you so much for being here. Do you mind just giving us a bit of background on yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. Excited to be part of this. I am based in Needham, Massachusetts, a little bit outside of Boston, and the Zoominfo Waltham office. Been originally from Chicago, so I'm not a Red Sox fan. But been with Zoominfo for 11 years. I started back when we were a contact and company lookup tool, and with like 40 employees, and was just an AE, helped us build out some of our first teams. And scale over 11 years to the full go-to-market platform, and today I have about 100 AEs on my team, bringing in new organizations from acquisitions and helping organizations go to market. So excited to be here and share any experiences I can.
Wicked. Thanks, Lou. I appreciate you being here. Super excited what you guys have to say. Okay, let's move on. Ido Nivron, he's the CEO at CloudShare. Again, CloudShare, thank you so much for sponsoring this webinar along with in tandem planning with Walnut. So Ido, please give us a bit of background on yourself so we can get a bit more acquainted.
Hey guys, thanks Mikey. I wish I was the CEO. Our CEO
Apologies.
Hero. Important too though, nonetheless. My name is Ido Nivron. I'm with CloudShare, been with the company for 5 months as the Chief Revenue Officer. I've been in sales myself for many years. Started off in digital ad sales, worked for companies the like of Seeking Alpha, the New York Times, and BBC, and then made my way and pivoted into tech and worked for a company called Wibbits for a few years in their video production tool, and became Chief Revenue Officer there. And now finally I'm at CloudShare, and I manage an amazing team of revenue professionals. So really excited to be here. A little bit about myself. I live in Toronto. Right now, it's a new moved here because of the pandemic. So pandemics are making shifts in my life as well, as I'm sure many other people. And I have 2 daughters. I grew up in Boston. So Lou, we have something a little bit in common there. And originally from Israel. So that's a little bit about me. My favorite sandwich is a mortadella sandwich with cheese. Just sharing, in case anyone. Anyways, just threw it out there.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks. I think it's a fantastic sandwich. I love it too, right? It's great to have another fellow Canadian around too. So that's great. Awesome. Thanks, Ido. Really excited to have you here as well. Okay, moving on. Adir Ben Yehuda from founding member of Walnut. Again, thank you for planning this out with CloudShare and sponsoring this as well, and being here.
Our pleasure.
Adir, thank you. Please just give us a bit of background on yourself.
First of all, I'm impressed. You managed to say my name perfect, so that's you train on this. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm Adir. I'm based in New York, Israeli in origin, but I feel like after 6 years here, plus a pandemic in the middle, I can call myself a real New Yorker at this point, right? It's been a heck of 2 years. I've been in Walnut since Walnut was Walnut, essentially, right? Started this mission together with the 2 co-founders there, and basically propagated the word since we launched the product. And I'm excited to be here and talk about like what I talk almost every day, right? What I'm trying to preach, the category that we're building right now, and the new dimension that we're trying to bring into the market. So very excited to be here among all those great people. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, we're excited to have you too, Adir. So thank you for being here. Super appreciative. Okay, Chris Rudigrap, CEO from Sendoso. I know you've been on a few of these before, so you know the drill. Great to have you here as well. And please just give us a bit of background on yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction. So I'm Chris Rudigrop, the CEO and co-founder of Sendoso. I started Sendoso about 5 years ago. Prior to that, spent about 10 years in sales, mostly in individual contributor roles. And I stumbled across the problem for Sendoso while being an AE and trying to send stuff to prospects and build a better relationship. Saw an opportunity to create a company. Fast forward, about 500 employees. We just announced 100 million in funding recently, and really excited to be on talking to everyone today.
Awesome. Congratulations on the fundraising.
Yeah, thank you.
Fantastic. And thank you for hopping on here and blessing us with your knowledge as well. And last but not least, before we dive into the juice of everything, Brian Cotter, SVP Global Sales Engineering at Seismic. Brian, thank you so much for being here. Please just give us a bit of a background on yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Mikey. I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of talk about things that are kind of near and dear to my heart and what I think about every day and how I try to help Seismic. But so for everyone here, I oversee all the pre-sales professionals for Seismic. So we are the geeks that can speak. We actually understand the problems, we understand the product, and we understand the value and the impact. So it's my job to help them and Ed Callanan, the CRO, to tell the best, most unique and relevant personalized stories at scale. So this is really interesting for me, just as far as, this conversation. I hope to learn a lot and hopefully kind of, pass along some information as well, because we are definitely in a space that, the B2B and the B2C world are colliding. And other than 2 years out of my professional career, I've been a pre-sales professional. So my job has been to figure out the stories to an ever-changing audience. And that's why one of the things I really think about with my own team is how do I create a group of chief storytellers to make sure that they tell the best Seismic stories to our buyers and our customers. So I'm looking forward to it, looking forward to learning, and I'm ready to roll.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. Really happy to have you here, and I love that. The geeks that speak. That's a fantastic little play on words there. Love it. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for being here. Now our audience knows who you are, or if they already know you even better. So again, thank you all for taking the hour out of your day to be here. Super excited to dive into everything. I know you're all very busy people, so very appreciative from the Sales Hacker team and everybody else that is here. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. And I'm going to go back to Brian to start off the conversation here. So Brian, I'm going to start off with a question. In your world, or what you've seen, how do you think storytelling can change the game when it comes to technical sales? What are your thoughts on that?
So this is something I think about all the time. And one of the things when I think about the B2C world that I live in, it's all about experiences. We all use Amazon. We all use, different, radio or music, tools and Spotify, things like that. So really, when I kind of think about, all these different tools we experience in our B2C world or our consumer world, it's all about that experience. And when I kind of think about that, I think about entertainment, movies and sports. And really, it's the stories that we learn about sporting events or movies or theater. And, kind of talking about the way that stories can impact technical sales is stories connect people, connections open up the doors to trust, and people buy from people they trust. And why is that so important in the world we live in today? Because everything is truncated. We have a world of more educated buyers, but there's also 850 plus companies that can tell you, we can help you sell more. So how do you differentiate when you have more people that are more educated in an environment where they just want to solve their problem right in front of them? And it's a really challenging part for us, because over the last 20 plus years, when I was at BMC, the seller owned everything. If you wanted to buy anything from BMC, you had to pick up the phone, you had to call them, and then they initiated, they executed, they drove. And throughout my career, I went to Salesforce, which a lot of people talk about cloud computing, but really the buyer enlightenment, it was the freemium, the try before you buy. It was an opportunity for them crowdsourcing to learn more about all this different great stuff that Salesforce had. But then also the subscription economy took off because of the way that he delivered software as a service. And I went to Zora, and all of a sudden I started realizing every single interaction has 3 ultimate outcomes: decrease wallet share, running flat, or increase wallet share. But every interaction is now a relationship, and that relationship created a ton of data. So I went to inside sales, where I'm like, well, it would be awesome if we could figure out this data to figure out what I need to do next. But then that actually helped us kind of navigate the cadence. But once again, when you get the opportunity to speak with someone, what are you going to say? What's the dialogue? What's the story? And I kind of go back to, we need as an organization to figure out some way to, on the front side, to speed up the close side, meaning we need to know where to aim in an environment where we might have to do self-research and come with a point of view, like an outside in, to kind of start a dialogue, or in the sales cycle, we can actually do more research and really understand the root cause of the problem. So all these different things, we can't just sit there and just throw a bunch of stuff out. We have to have some sort of structure. So really the reason why I believe that storytelling is so critically important in kind of this technical sales world is we have to find a way to marry information, meaning someone's going to learn something, with emotion, so they can actually feel it and understand what they're doing, to make it memorable. And it's a simple equation, but it's an equation that runs multi-billion-dollar a year businesses: entertainment, music, sports, movies, theater. We all strive to learn. We all strive to feel connected. And we all strive to kind of have those memorable moments. Why should B2B selling be different than what we're experiencing as consumers? So with that being said, one of the things that I really tried to do with my team, and part of it was, and I'm one of those people that is a very curious, ADHD type of personality, and I needed things to actually help me focus and componentize certain things if I needed to do my job correctly. So one of the things that I tried to do is I tried to create a structure, and I call it the storytelling framework. And really what it does, it walks me through 3 different parts. And this is something that can be an accordion. I can do it in 15 minutes or I can do it in 15 hours. But really the breakdown is I need to uncover the story. I need to uncover the buyer's world and what they're going through. And then the next part is I need to prepare the story. How do I marry my solution with the buyer's problems? And then ultimately, how do I deliver that with joint alignment? So if we double click into each one of those, when we start talking about uncovering the story, at a very high level, how do I understand? And this could be research you do before the call. It could be people that that are in the industry, or full-on discovery, one discovery session or multiples. But really, I try to understand where we need to aim. Because a lot of companies will come and talk to you about their kind of symptoms, but very few will come to you with their root cause problems. And so how do you navigate understanding the surface problem versus where the root is? And that's kind of just knowing where to aim and really being able to get into a dialogue or a conversation or doing research to understand the pressures that organization is going through, whether it's an internal versus external, competitive threat, new product launch. When you kind of peel that back, okay, we got pressures. What are the problems that are impacting the business? Once you can kind of understand the problems, you can peel that back to say symptom, symptom, symptom. Oh, there's a root cause. Then you can actually start talking to them about how are you going to get out of this way. And they have a plan. But there's always plans that said, oh, are we going to buy, are we going to build, or what are we going to do? But then there's also prioritization. So really kind of understanding the P's and allowing yourself to understand the buyer's world, you will then know how to aim. And the reason why I kind of say that is the next part of preparing the story, you got to figure out a way to make it unique and relevant and personalized at every part of that buyer's journey. I don't care if it's a BDR or if it's a renewal, upsell, cross-sell. And that's where I kind of talk about preparing the story. And this is where I bring in my own kind of mnemonic device to say, there's a 3-step process I go through. What is the flash? What is the memorable moments you need that company or those people to leave with? Okay, these are the 3 things. After I've done the discovery, I distill it down, and this is where I need to end up at the end of it. The second one is the framework. What is the outline, the structure? Think about writing a thesis in high school or college. You have a problem statement, you have some things you want to prove, the detail, and then you wrap it up. It's the same, it's a mindset to say, I need to understand where I'm going to drive and where I want to end up. So when you start going through that, the third part about it is the flow. What are the personas and the use cases that you need to highlight? But more importantly, the flow is the narrative. How am I going to make this digestible and consumable to my audience members so they can easily walk away and remember the memorable moments? Thinking back to what I said earlier, information they need to learn, emotion they need to connect. That's how we're going to make ourselves memorable, which is also differentiation, not just in the product, but also the process. This is where you can create trust because you have connections, because stories connect people. And at the end of the day, prepare the story is all about how can I make every single conversation unique and relevant, personalized to that individual or to that group of people that are going to solve that problem for their company. And then the last part, kind of digging into this, Mikey, is delivering the story. You need to have joint alignment. And there's something that if you've done the first two, you have the opportunity to do the third. If you don't do the first two, you can't do the third, meaning you can't deliver with confidence and conviction. Confidence means I know my stuff. I know the buyer. I know my product. Now I can deliver it with conviction, meaning I believe it. And that becomes infectious. That becomes something that people will trust you. They'll buy into because you've done the road work. As my boss always says, you got to do the road work to actually reap the benefit. And then with that being said, and this is one thing that I kind of learned over time, if you do uncover the story, if you do prepare the story, and now you deliver it in the B2C to B2B world, the one thing is the buyer is leading the journey. And if you do all that work, you get something I refer to as situational fluency. The buyer can take you wherever you want to go, but you know exactly where you need to get them at any particular part of that sales process. So this is something, and one of the things that I kind of highlight is I will talk to a lot of different people around organizations about storytelling. And this is more of a mindset versus a hardcore, this is a SaaS enterprise level sale that's going to be whatever size business. This mindset can be applied to anything. It can be applied to a BDR. It can be applied to a product marketing group, or it can apply to a global selling organization. It's really about slowing down the front side so we can speed up the close side. But more importantly, how are we going to create that B2C experience when we're in an actual B2B world? And these are just some things that we've put in play for my whole career, just to actually make sure that I was the best sales engineer that I could ever be. But also for Seismic, how do we actually keep up with an ever-changing industry with the rate of innovation that's going on and the expectations that the consumers have, and everything is a click away? We need to be able to have that mindset. So when we talk about a feature or function, it always has that framework flow and flash. Or if we're talking about $1 million deal, it's the same mindset where we really need to kind of understand where the buyer is, where our solution fits in, and the impact and the value that they're going to have. So to just kind of wrap it up, I believe that storytelling is something that we just need to make part of our DNA. And I think it's a mindset that anything and everything that we can learn allows me to connect with someone. And if I can connect with them, then there's a level of trust. And I think, Mark Benioff talks about the trust revolution. If the data is wrong, they're not going to trust you. If you don't put forth the effort, buyers aren't going to trust you. And I think that that's one of the things I've seen with the B2C world is the experiences are consistent and they're relevant and unique. So the buyers start to trust that provider wherever they're going to. So that's kind of my story and the way that I believe that we can kind of help our sales organizations be able to sell in this transition of B2C to B2B expectations in the sales world, in any industry, in any geo, in any vertical.
Yeah.
I just want to add to that, actually, Mikey. I have to say, Brian, like something you said really struck a chord with me. Thinking about like storytelling as a whole, like fundamentally storytelling is like the fabric of our culture, our relationships, right? Like you think about sitting down with friends, right? Like you typically kind of bond around stories, whether stories that you've experienced individually or with them, right? But it's something that connects us as a whole. And if you can tie your messaging to a story, where you can walk someone through a story and at the end of it end up with, where you want to be with them, that's a great way, like a very organic way to connect with people. So on the one side, you have, the organic, like this is what we're used to. So going through that kind of process is something someone's expecting. So meeting those expectations, like how I want to be talked to, but also just connecting on a personal level, right? Which is a big part of sales as well. So I also, another thing that popped into my mind when you were talking is I read an article once about like memory competitions. This is completely off, but it's interesting. So there's these people who have like competitions about memorizing long lists of numbers. And the way they do it is, they can memorize 500 something numbers in a row. They could just read out a sequence of 500 numbers in a row. And the way they do it is they translate the numbers into letters and then tell stories using those letters. Mm-hmm. And then they remember the story, and all they have to do is convert it back to numbers and just list out the numbers one by one. So it's really interesting how, like, I think it also, not only is it a way to connect, but it's also a way to retain information. Like a story is more retainable. You remember it better than just a bunch of information thrown at you. So really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and I totally agree on that too, because it's like, I feel like a lot of, sales reps out there don't distinguish the story right away. right? And it's just like, I think that's the number one thing and the most key thing in selling is being like, okay, this is the story here. And then like what Brian said, how it's, they can take you in multiple different ways, but as long as you have, the baseline story to get to, then we always know where to get back to and then kind of get that route moving into the, ideally the close win, right? So I love
I
that's great.
have a question for Brian here. I think a lot of good points. One thing that I'm asking myself, especially in the last year and a half, right, 2 years, about attention span. So, and you probably feel it as well, right? You see prospect and buyer, they have less time, meetings are getting shorter, they want to meet less. So how do you incorporate this with like declining attention span? Well, the storytelling part, right?
It's a great point. I think the fact of the matter is when, I have different quotes that I've actually kind of come up with, and that, emotion plus information equals memorable. That's actually based from some quotes of individuals that have run major entertainment organizations. So if you think about, sports or music or theater, stuff like that, if you can capture someone's attention in the beginning, then I think that they're actually more apt to actually spend time with you. So there's an element of like, you have to earn the right for you to kind of get their time. But it's one of those things that, when we look at the way that we go about selling these days, it's not like we can go in, do 70 hours of research, come back, put together a 4-hour demonstration and sit for 9 hours and present it to you. We need to be very quick. And that's the expectations of the B2B world. They want to go quick. However, if you're able to kind of create that trust, I think you can actually get to the root cause, and then you have that connection where they can actually be a bit more open-minded to sitting back and listening. So, I mean, our jobs at the end of the day, and kind of to your point, is like, to answer your question directly, you got to have a point of view very quickly so you can politely either validate or challenge your buyer's point of view. Either way, you're going to get a dialogue started.
Yeah.
You're either going to say, yes, good, and then they're going to say, jump on, they're going to align with you, or you're going to say something like, oh, I don't necessarily agree with you. Let's dig into that. And I think that that's kind of part of what we do is we need to figure out a way to actually get a dialogue that moves them past their 67% research that they've done before they called the buyers. Because if we just go along and say, oh, I want a trial, then we're just going down the road of figuring out how to reduce and discount our licensing because we are a commodity. Like, how do you actually create a unique, different experience? And that's why I kind of say Seismic is what I sell. What I walk you through is the way that I approach storytelling. So I think our process is a competitive differentiator. And one thing I'll ask on Mikey, I know that we need to move on to the next person. I talk to a lot of sales leaders and founders of companies, and I'm like, well, how do you guys sell? And what do you do? And they talk about storytelling. I say, oh, it's great. Look, walk me through the process. Or like, how do you get a whole team to do that? And it's very interesting, the different responses that you get. And I think, to your point, a company has to go all in saying, this is a culture, we're going to move forward. And I think that some of those things you will learn in your individual companies, the best way to engage a buyer, connect with them so they trust you. And I think that that's where the difference is. But it's got to be a commitment to the sales organization or the go-to-market organization to say, we want to make sure everything is unique, relevant, and personalized. And how do you get there? That's the process that you need to make sure that your GTM team is all on the same page on.
Awesome.
Yeah, one real quick soundbite there too on the attention piece and storytelling is I think that I see a lot of good reps telling stories across a lot of different channels and mediums. So you have a strategy where, maybe during that demo call, you're talking to them, but you set up prior to that some emails or a video message or a direct mailer or a follow-up from another party. And so all those different things tell a story across all the different channels. And so you can grab attention through one channel and leverage the same storytelling strategy across others throughout the whole buyer and customer journey.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's an awesome point, and I agree with you 100%. And at the end of the day, I might travel for 2 or 3 days, and I may not pull up my machine at all. It is we have live social, we have LinkedIn, we have email and text, and it's about that story and connections. And I think when we were talking earlier, like a lot of companies try to figure out how to get their teams to do the road work so they can connect with their buyers. And it's an age-old problem. And I'm not saying that I've solved anything other than things that we find that to be working for us. And just 20 years of being a pre-sales professional, working with a lot of sales guys, you got to figure out how to work with the buyer as well as the seller to make sure that story is hitting the mark for you.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks, guys. Well, I love the insights, but we got to move on to our next one here. Ido, I got another question for you here to start it off. How can hands-on experimentation with the product win over prospects? Would love to hear your insights on that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, before I do that, I just want to I'll actually incorporate what Adir actually said before and what Brian has been talking about, and like add it on to this question as well, right? Because I think it all is one big picture here. So Adir was talking about people's attention span changing. I think we've seen kind of a shift in the market over time. There's an evolution that's happening on the buyer's end. Their expectations of us as salespeople, as companies coming to them with a product or a solution, right? What do they want from us? And so, there's two things we're trying to do with them. We're trying to engage with them so they're interested, they're active in your conversation with them. And the other thing is retention, right? They want to retain information. You want to leave behind. You need it to be impactful the time that you spend with them. And so, at CloudShare, that's what we do. Basically, we enable people to have experiences with the product hands-on. I think that's exactly the factor of engagement that we're talking about that makes that big change there, that big impact. I want to kind of pause and kind of take it back because I've been in sales for a long time, and I think that the evolution there is really important to kind of mention. Everyone, I'm going to go through this quickly, but and everyone will agree if you have sales experience, everyone here does. Back in the day, it used to be a pitch and a deck, right? Like you used to come to a meeting, you used to show a deck, you used to walk them through all these slides, and you would be talking at the customer, right? Then that kind of moved into like interactive pitches, right? Like you'd have dynamic pitches and things would change and be like interactive, and maybe you'd incorporate a video in there, and that would be really cool, right? Mm-hmm. So you were like cutting edge if you were doing that. And then you went into product demoing, right? So just still talking at the customer and showing them your product, walking them through it, making it interactive as much as you can. I think what's happened now is that there's the ability to deliver hands-on experiences. So I can show you, I can let you feel and touch the product, interact with it while I'm walking you through that sales pitch. And I think that's what the expectations of buyers have shifted to over this time, right? Because our attention spans are shorter. You expect more coming in. You don't have as much time. You want to know right away if this is a right fit for you or not. And you want to be able to touch and feel it, especially when you're making decisions about big buys, big purchases. So that's kind of what we do. And so basically these expectations from the consumers, they come from, there's three new expectations the consumers have or buyers have, right? They want it customized. They want it tailored to them. They want to come into a meeting and know that you're not giving them a one-size-fit-all presentation of what you do, right? You need to know them. You need to know what they're looking for. You need to do some research about them in advance and then come in and have them feel like you're tailoring this conversation to their needs. And so, typically start off with some sort of discovery, have an understanding what they're looking for, and then guide the conversation in the right direction. In addition to that, you want them to have real hands-on experiences. You want them to be able to touch and interact with your product if possible. And then the last thing, of course, is you want to be able to see their interaction and guide them through it and make that interaction with the product as best as possible, right? So those expectations have shifted the way that we need to kind of pitch our products and come to a demo or an intro meeting with a customer prepared, because you want them to have an experience, a hands-on experience. I think that the pandemic has shifted things as a whole, and part of that, the companies that have been working with us and use those hands-on experiences, they were prepared for it, right? They had business continuity. They were ready for what happened with the pandemic, but many companies were not there, and they found themselves caught in the middle, and they had to kind of react quickly and adapt to the new way of working, which is very remote based. So something that used to be, a luxury is now turned into a necessity. Companies need this new kind of way of doing things. And then, of course, once you are delivering those experiences and hands-on experiences, it's important that you understand what is working, what is not working, and pull information, insights from that experience that you had with the customer to move on to the next step of your sales process. So was it effective? Were they engaged? Were they interactive? So basically the whole conversation, the hands-on experiences used to be following the pitch, right? You used to do a pitch, then you'd get interest, then you'd probably do a POC, and then they'd get that hands-on experiences. Now you want to shorten that funnel. You want to start off earlier on with the hands-on experiences, really let them touch and feel the product. And then from there, you're already kind of set as far as like defining whether there is an opportunity there or not, the level of interest, the level of engagement. And throughout that entire process, because it's hands-on, you get more engagement, you get more interaction with the customer, and you get to sit beside them. So like, I always equate it to this, right? In the past, let's say you want to sell someone, even if you came into an office and met them in person, right? And you gave them a laptop with your software installed on it, and you're sitting there and you're guiding them through it, right? You're not seeing their screen necessarily as they're interacting. You have multiple people in front of you. They're all playing around with your software. You can't be as involved. Now, remotely, you can elevate that hands-on experiences, that interpersonal experience, but do it all remotely, which is something that's like the next big evolution in the sales pitch cycle. So that's as far as hands-on experiences. I hope I answered the question. It's kind of long, but
no, I love that, and that's funny. Well, it's interesting you say that too, because I actually just did a webinar earlier this week, and what we were talking about is, getting people ready for this hybrid world of selling, right? And moving into 2022, we did some research and found out that like a lot of buyers prefer the digital experience rather without a rep, right? Rep-free experience. So they come on, they utilize the product, and then they kind of move forward, right? And that's what it's looking like it's moving towards. But if we can kind of like immerse the two together, right, then that's definitely the home run, right? Because you get the sales experience, you get the person to kind of help you, but you also get to actually utilize and get into the product to really help out with that as well. So
I mean, Mikey, like self-service is great, right? And it's wonderful, but the problem is that if you have a complex product and you want to make sure that you tout the features and capabilities of that product, really highlight to the buyer where the value propositions align with their problems as a company, and you connect those dots for them. You need to be able to be there and walk them through it and see what they're doing and how they're interacting with your product. And I think that is that kind of like exactly that self-service but elevated experience of also being there as they're doing that, really giving them that those tools. So 100%. But yeah, I mean, self-service is wonderful. Obviously, when I have an opportunity, it's really hard to get these opportunities with potential buyers. You want to put your best foot forward. You want to make sure that you're giving them, you're respecting their time. I believe Brian said that before. They're busy. They come to your meeting. You want to make sure that time is spent in the best way possible, giving them really what they need, and not just talking at them, but talking with them and involving them.
I don't. When you mentioned a little bit about often giving that hands-on experience early. Like, the thing I would get nervous about is, do I lose that narrative of the story that I want to tell and where I want to make sure I cover today? Like, do you have any tips for how to allow the buyer to be really interactive, but make sure you stay on your story so you get through everything you need to?
That's an awesome question. So part of our sales process is exactly that. It's storytelling while demonstrating, while showing, and enabling the other person to touch and feel at the same time, right? So you're connecting the dots, highlighting things, and also telling the story of what the benefit is. So I believe it's like painting a picture. So if I'm showing you, for instance, my product, and I'm like, well, imagine right now that moving forward, you could do this with your customers, right? You could walk your customers through this experience. You're able to do, so painting a picture of how you can use certain capabilities and functionality to tell the story to your customer and how they can use that as a benefit to them. So it is telling a story while also having it interactive, engaging, dynamic, and they can also interact at the same time with it. I was talking to my wife, I'm relatively new. I said 5 months with CloudShare, and I joined 5 months ago. My wife was like, explain to me, like, what do you guys do? My wife is not technical. She's not from the sales world. She doesn't know anything about what we do. And I said to her, hey, listen, we bought a car, right? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, would you buy the car online? And she's like, no. I was like, would you want to be in it? Would you like to sit in it? Would you like to feel how the car feels when you're sitting, right? Like it's like people want to have that touch point with the product before they're able to commit to it. And the sooner you could do it, the better, right? Because you can get traction. So many times people start their buying cycle by experiencing something, right? You sat in someone else's car, you're like, man, I really love that car. Like, right? So it's really giving them that touch and feel experience.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome. Love that. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Okay, we got a few more to get through in the next 20 minutes that we have left. So I'm going to move on to the next topic of the next topic here. Adir, I'm gonna throw it towards you here. In your words, what does it mean to deliver customer-centric sales experiences?
Yeah, so I think a lot of things that both Brian and Ido touched here are right, but I feel like we're trying to. Obviously, there's a change in the industry, right? This is like everyone agrees here, I think, on the call, right? There's a change on how buyers are perceiving the buying process and doing all those kind of things, right? And maybe I'll start from a different place, right? I'm using Zoominfo. That's an amazing product. I'm using Sendoso. Chris, we're a client as well. And the reason Walnut adopted those two great products, is because we wanted to make sure that we're reducing friction in front of our clients. We're using Form Complete from Zoominfo, hack to the level that they don't need to fill a full form on the website itself, reduce the friction there, right? And then from Chris from Sendoso, we try to build a more personalized experience that has some more fun stuff on the offline aspect. Those are the two things we did. And the main thing that we see across the board, and the reason we did is we're trying to reduce friction for our potential buyers, right? So a lot of things that people are doing today, they're trying to resolve the same problem or the same challenges, those challenges that they have with the same paradigm. Hey, let's have a prospect, put him on a website. He will go inbound. Once he goes inbound, let's have an SDR talk with him, and then the SDR will do like a discovery call for 30 minutes, and then he will go to an account executive. The account executive will do a discovery call, and only then, on the third call, you'll have like a conversation about what the prospect actually needs, right? Even if you did a little bit discovery and talk, you don't unveiling the pain very early on in the beginning, right? And until it reaches solution engineer or something that you can actually talk about the pain that I have and the resolution that I can, you're still going through this rigorous buying process, purchasing process. So that's something that the industry is still haven't changed. And what essentially we're trying to change, and being a B2B or moving from a B2B kind of like managed service or managed selling process service to actually a centric buying process, to put the prospect in the center itself. It's actually having the prospect engage with the product very early on the website level. I'm not talking about self-serve. I'm talking about the ability to engage with the product in like more data, maybe engage with the product in kind of capsulated environment. You can have today, there are many tools today that you can have that you can learn about the prospect and what he did on your website to start the conversation from a different place. To start the conversation from, hey, I saw you engage there. I saw you engage there. One of the things that I love CloudShare. I love the brand. I love the product. But one of the things that you said is like, you need to be there hand in hand with your prospect while he's trying the product. Why? You can use product like Full Story, for example, that you can see what he's doing. And if you get stuck, you can flag stuff. You can put intercom. You have more places to make sure that the seller itself wouldn't be a major part of the process. Now, the equivalent is B2C, because that's the main topic we're talking about. Think about the fact that you'll go in the store and you want to buy a coat. That's awesome. But then the cash in the cash register, they ask you, oh, really? This is the coat? Are you sure you're committed enough for this coat? Are you sure it's hot enough outside or cold enough outside for this coat? No one is asking you. No one is giving you this entire process. You decided, you made the research before. You decided you want to go, I don't know, buy a Niklo coat for that matter, or whatever other brand that you have out there, right? And you went to the store, you bought this coat, and no one is asking you any other questions. Now you're going to tell me, and now a lot of the organizations we're talking with are scared from this move because it changes, because maybe our product is too complex, or maybe our product is too expensive, right? Or maybe we're too enterprising for doing all those kind of things. Yes, there are many kind of situations that you need to adopt, but at the end of the day, as I see it, we need to start changing the paradigm of like, hey, having that user prospect coming in inbound, having a discovery call, doing all those kind of things, rather than empowering the different sellers, the different, talking about Brian, commitment from the go-to-market team, empowering each one of the people on the selling chain, on the sales funnel, to actually expose and talk about the pain points and talk about the product very early on. Because reality is, when those buyers are coming, they did a huge research before. They know what they want. They like, and that's like 60-70% of the selling of the buying process is not with you. They know what they want, but they also don't care about your entire product. They're coming to you with one problem, two problems they want to resolve, and then they move on, right? I came to Sendoso because we wanted to start sending gifts or a swag just for new employees. And then we broadened this use case, right? But that's the main problem that I had. And I came to Zoominfo because I needed more context and more and to increase my outbound. That's the one problem. Right now, my spend with Zoominfo, I can't disclose it, but Louis, you owe me something. So I came with one issue, with one challenge, and I didn't want to hear anything else. I didn't want to talk with anyone else. Hey, that's what I need. Can you do it? Awesome. I looked at 3 companies, send me pricing list. Bye. Thank you. And the last thing I would say, because I want to make sure that everyone has enough time, I think a lot of companies are misusing call recording apps like Gong and Chorus, right? The reason they're misusing it is because instead of empowering the reps, educating the reps, the reps are going and they're going on a call like robots. And I want to hit that point, and I have to hit that point. Otherwise my manager would tell me, hey, you didn't mention that, right? You kind of like lose the fun and the romance in selling. And that's the exact opposite. It moves away from putting the buyer in the center. It moves away. It actually puts the entire sales process on the seller. The seller is important in the sales process if you have to hit those points. So I don't care if my prospect has those problems. I have to hit those points. So to sum it up, I think that's what it means. Is empowering each and every person on your sales funnel to show the product, making sure that you expose the pain as early on with different kind of tools, even before they engage with you online, on the website itself, and then start the conversation, not from a broad discovery, but a direct discovery about the pain of the prospect that came inbound, and then move forward there. That's the expectation from buyers today, period. They're only getting more and more demanding around those expectations.
Can I address something, Dear? You mentioned Full Story and Gong, which are both tools that are great, and I've used both, and they're fantastic tools. The only thing is that they're reactive tools and not proactive. I mean, meaning they happen after the fact. When you see a full story, it happened after the interaction the customer had with your product, right?
Not necessarily. You can see
it in real time, but again, you don't know that they're necessarily doing what you want them to do or having the best experience, or an experience that is connected to the pains that they mentioned to you or that you know about them in the discovery part of your communication with them, right? You're trying to solve a problem and you want to make sure that they're looking at the correct things within your product to align with those problems, to solve those problems for them, to help them solve those problems. And I think, Full Story is great. Gong is great. I use it as proactively in a way that I train, the sales team to make sure that they're addressing the issues that we see afterwards with those things, right? So like, I agree with you. You can be proactive with those tools, but I'm just saying, like, it's after the fact. I feel like you have like one shot to impress, right? Like someone's coming into your website, they're interested, they think you may be a solution that's right for them. You have one shot to impress them. In your interactions with them, you need to make the most of your time, and you need to address everything in the best way possible. And when that one shot is there, you better come loaded and ready to like a very short period of time, because like you said, attention.
I have to say I disagree, because we talked like 5, 10, 20 minutes ago about how you need to build a holistic experience, right? Chris mentioned that, Brian mentioned that you need to hit them at every single place they go. And so you have, in my opinion, you have way more than one shot to impress. You build a holistic experience, but you need to make sure it's hand off. The buyer or the seller, the salesperson is not important in this process. He's accompanying the process. He helps you move to Brian's point, which I think had a few really good points. He helps direct you, but he is no way control the sales process. The person who controls the pain and the person who controls what he wants to buy is the prospect. And I know it's like kind of hard to change this paradigm, because that's a paradigm we've been working on for 20 years, 15 years since SaaS started, but it's the expectation is different now. And to talk about Full Story and stuff like that, you can build those tools in a very online and reactive way around your tech stack.
Awesome. I love the insight here, guys. This is amazing. I'm getting a lot of incredible nuggets throughout this, but we do have a bit more to get through here. So I got one more. I got one for you, Chris. Right? I want to hear your take on this one here. How do you leverage offline experiences to personalize the customer journey? I know at Sendoso, that's kind of the direct mail aspect. What are your thoughts on that? Yeah,
so I've got a few tactical takeaway ideas to share. So I think one is really literally like writing out what that experience should look like from top of funnel all the way through customer renewal and beyond. And I think that you see product teams doing this really well, where they're really writing out what's the user experience. But I find that go-to-market teams sometimes don't little physically write out what am I going to do at every single stage, and how do we train the teams to be in sync on that customer journey. So I think the one thing is like, get go-to-market teams to write out these experiences and check back in with these customer journeys to make sure that people are actually following through with this. I think number two is really operationalize it. So once you've kind of got that map and that plan, I think a lot of reps create their own journeys on their own. And, I think companies should invest in tools for enablement. We got Seismic, for example, where you can create these repeatable processes and train your team on how to really personalize the customer journey so that you can holistically invest more in that customer journey and see the results. And I think that also includes empowering the customer-facing teams to act one-on-one and think, and while also thinking about automations, but to enable these customer-facing teams to be able to use that offline channel and send stuff to prospects or customers to then create that repeatable journey. And the last thing really is track it. So I think if you're really thinking, hey, we need to invest in our customer journey, well, are you tracking that? Is it working? Are you testing things? Are you doing things that you can repeat? And if they're working, repeat them more. So I think tracking is something that, again, I think some people talk, hey, let's invest in our customer journey. Let's personalize it. Let's do this. But then 6 months, 9 months, a year, are you actually reporting back on it? Which I think sometimes gets lost. And, to summarize it up, ultimately, and I think Brian mentioned this too, people buy from people. And so how do you be personable, be human, be quirky, have fun with it? I think that was one of my advantages back when I was in sales, is I just had fun with it all the time. And I think people like that, and people bought from that because they like that. And so I think as you create that customer journey, how do you remove some of that kind of corporatiness that companies seem to have and put some fun back into it? And I think people these days gravitate to a more fun customer experience.
Yeah. And I love what you said there. It's kind of like, let the reps take it and do it themselves, right? Get your own take on it, right? Like almost add your own kind of, little spice or like your brand to it, right? And your process that really adds that extra kind of experience and relationship piece to it to really get an understanding of that person who you're speaking to and who's ultimately selling to you, right? So I love that point as well. Cool.
Just real one quick. I think we're at an interesting kind of intersection point where we've all come from different sales backgrounds, and we see the B2B and the B2C worlds colliding, and there's all these different tool sets that are out there to basically micro moments of selling or learning, and how do we actually take all this new technology and kind of put it into that buyer's journey that one is going to be good for the buyer, but also we also have to go out there and sell. And I think sometimes the buyer, there is so much knowledge out there that sometimes the buyers are overwhelmed. They've done a ton of research, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they understand where they need to go. And it's kind of like WebMD into the tried and true medical community. There's a process that doctors go through, and when you go in there, you have pain, and you basically say the doctor says, great, medical history, physical exam, blood work, put you in a machine. They're going to come back and say, I can fix it, but this is what we need to do. How many doctors are going to basically say, oh yeah, you went on WebMD, we'll schedule that procedure for tomorrow? I mean, the doctor and the medical community, much like us, we need to kind of fill in the gaps. But to Adir's point, like there are tools and there are capabilities that allowed us to kind of supplement the knowledge learning, but in a guided way. And I think that intersection point for us is really, what are the points when we think about B2B and B2C that we're going to intersect, and how do we incorporate technology to continue giving that buyer what they need to know? But for us as sellers, we also realize we need to inject in our value and the impact that we can have on their organization. So I think that's going to be a pretty interesting conversation and advancement in technology and sales processes that we're going to have to, continue to look at as the next 5 or 10 or 15 years down the road, because I think that sales and pre-sales, the next generation, is going to continue to evolve.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Well said.
Agreed.
Yeah, the evolution will certainly continue. I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah.
I have my opinions, but Brian, we need to talk about this after.
Awesome. Great. Love that take. Okay, cool. Well, we got one more point we want to rip through here quickly. And Lou, I'm going to hand it over to you here on this one. But I would love to hear your thoughts on, how do you leverage or how do you shorten the path from data to engagement? I know the companies have so much data. So how do you analyze that and shorten that path to ultimately moving into the engagement aspect? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, we do have a lot of data. I think the good news is we can actually handle more data than we could ever handle before, right? So you have tools like Snowflake and stuff you can get from Amazon and Microsoft and Google that let you, pull millions and millions of data points all together and merge them. And we need to embrace that. And we need to say, all right, I want to take all the data I can get and I want to real time put it together. And if you pull some, RevOps resources and you ask them to do this and you give them the right data sets, then they can really do that. And what I think we really need to do is you have to take all that first party data that you have from who hit your website and who's had experiences with your sales team before and what are the fields you have in the CRM, and then you got to marry that with all that third party data that can get you a long way to the process, right? And if you do that, and Adir hinted at it, right? He said he's using form complete. So instead of asking a whole bunch of questions that a lot of people ask on their website, right? He's asking one or two questions, and then he's going ahead and leveraging other data sets to fill in the blanks. And so his website conversion is going to be richer, but also, and he's going to see people convert. And one of the things I'd point out, like one of the first things that shortens our path here is to get our people that are hitting our website and all that traffic we're spending so much money driving to actually interact with us faster. Mm-hmm. And today, 1.5% of the people that hit your website will actually fill out a form. Right. And part of the problem is we're asking them too many questions. We're making it difficult for them to do that. We're giving them an experience they're not sure they want to partake in if they do fill out the form. And so we're seeing like 40% of the people start to fill out the form and then bail. Right. Yeah. So what we can do to really shorten this is pull all that data together and then make sure we're orchestrating that data across our systems. So, enrich all of your data sets, combine them all together. And if you do that, right now, you have that total story in your CRM and your marketing automation system. And now we can go out and draw up what does that personalized story look like or tell. And Chris kind of mentioned, like, there's the story for when you finally get them to the whole demo, and then there's the story, in your email and whatnot. I mean, there's even the story for your ad retargeting, right? And that's one of the spots we can really improve if you pump all this data together, right? Tell that story. If you're appending all the factors about a company, when I go retarget, I don't need to treat every person that ever visited my website the same anymore. I can realize that this one person was a student and they're not really going to buy from me. And this person is at a large enterprise company that would fit, and I can get, retarget at them. This is what we do for large enterprise companies in your industry. And then I can segment out, and these are the small ones, but I have products for the small ones also, and leverage that and cut them up into different campaigns and retarget to them. This is what we do for small companies, and start to tell that story so that they can engage faster. But on top of retargeting, I think you can do it, in the forms, you can do an awful lot using this data to orchestrate the plays your sales team is doing. So if you go ask your sales team, like, what are the triggers you're looking for? Oh, you like when a company gets funding. You like when a company gets a new executive, right? We can get that data in mass, and we can start to draw those plays so that our sales team doesn't have to start there. And when somebody finds it, they're more likely to interact with us. And our sales rep, if they're using that correctly, can get into that experience. And I like there's kind of an argument about what exactly does that experience look like. And I think it depends on the product you're selling. But if you've pumped all this data in and made it really accessible to your sales team, depending on the product you sell, you can start that experience. Do we need to give them a trial? Do they need to be hands-on? Do we need to talk to them about the way they are, or whatever it is? But I think the key here is to go just make sure that data is flowing across all your systems, and then revamp what your sales team is doing with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I love that. And that's what I was going to mention too, like what you said, whereas if you have the data and you can analyze it properly, then you can already have that storyline before you even start that initial conversation, right? So then you're not, coming into it with a bunch of almost like info dump. You already kind of know what they might be interested in and where we start, right?
Exactly. And most of us have multiple value props. And if you know, hey, this company has Salesforce and I have a value prop for that, right? Now we can start there and we can minimize the discovery and we're more likely to hit on and find the pain.
Yeah, totally. I think Lou just broke out there. Oh, there he is. He's back. Okay, cool. Well, I know we're pretty much at time here, everybody. We just hit noon. So before I let everybody go and move on with their day, I would love to close it out here, thanking CloudShare and Walnut for putting this together. Fantastic event. I certainly got a ton of little nuggets that I can kind of put into my day-to-day, and I hope everybody that was here learned just as much as I did. So Brian, Chris, Ido, Lou, and Adir, thank you all for taking the hour out of your day to be here with us. Super appreciative. It's been fantastic hanging out with you guys for the last hour, and I'm really looking forward to future webinars that we get to do together. So again, thank you all so much for being here. And one last thing, if anybody has any questions that are still in the audience that we didn't get to, please go follow all of these guys on LinkedIn or connect with them. Ask them any questions you might have. I'm sure when they have the time, they'll get back to you as soon as they can. So again, thank you all so much for being here. It's been fantastic.